from what I know about Asian drivers, I should have expected it, but I figured in Asia, Asian drivers would drive good, but not in Korea. Not the drivers I was with anyway. Could have been bad luck too,
So do you think it's a cultural thing then, or is it the way they're taught? Because I don't know what it's like in Canada. I'm assuming it's similar. Here you have to pass a very rigorous driving test, and it's more common for people to fail than pass. So maybe they don't have that there.
That could be part of it. I don't know about how rigorous the driving test is here. Like I passed mine with flying colors. I didn't have an issue with it. But the first time I drove a car, I was 12 years old. So like I had more experience behind the wheel of a car than people who, because in Canada you can't legally drive till you're 16 and have your learner's permit, or they call it a G1. They call it in Ontario. But I grew up in the country, and my dad used to let me drive his truck sometimes. Like he'd be with me, and it was a standard. And a standard is very common in Europe, but not common in North America, and definitely not in Asia. Asia, everybody drives.
What does a standard mean? Does that mean manual gears?
Yeah. You got a clutch. You got 3 pedals. You have the manual gears, right? Very, very common over there. Over here, it's like 1 in 40 cars is a standard or manual. Yeah. Right. If most people drive automatic transmission.
It's the opposite way around here. It's very few cars are automatics, which I never could understand. It didn't seem to make sense to me. And there are all kinds of excuses as to why you had to learn to shift these fecking gears, And when I was learning to drive, I complained about it enormously, and then I gave up learning to drive because of it. I thought this is silly.
Well, that's the thing. Like my wife can't drive standard. Like I tried to teach her many times. She can't do it. She just can't wrap her head around it. And the longer she does it, the worse she gets. And she gets panicked, she gets anxiety, and then she just stops and refuses to drive. Yeah. So we have to switch seats, and then so I get that. But I found, so when I got my driver's license, my mother drove an automatic, and my dad drove a manual, right? And so I learned, when I got my learner's permit, I learned on an automatic for the most part. And I was having a hard time getting good. Like I was making a lot of these weird mistakes, And then my dad took me for a drive a couple times in his car, and I had to learn how to drive. And it was a Ford Mustang too, so like very powerful, very fun car to drive. And it's a 5-speed manual transmission. And automatically, like almost immediately, I got really good at driving because of that car. And I found that my reasoning behind it was that my relationship between the vehicle and the road and myself became more intimate, right? It's like, to me, like the way I might equate it is like, have you ever played that stupid game called Guitar Hero?
No, I've never played. That's one I've never played.
Yeah. Well, to me, it'd be like trying to use Guitar Hero to learn how to play guitar. Right? Like you'll never get good at playing guitar using Guitar Hero, but it's like the automatic transmission version of playing music, like everything's being done for you. You're doing some small commanding, and everything else is taken care of. Right. So the automatic, the standard gave me a more intimate understanding of the nuances of driving. Yeah. And very quickly I got to a higher level of driving, and to that point where I only drove manual transmission vehicles when I could help it up until not that long ago, because when I bought, after me and Megan moved in together, the first car I bought was a manual because an automatic, because I knew she had to be able to drive it, right? Yeah. So, so I don't own a manual transmission vehicle right now. But my next car, if I ever do buy another car, will be absolutely a manual if I can find one. Yeah. They're getting harder to find, and I don't buy new. I never buy new because I can't just order one. I have to buy a used car that has the features I like, which is hard to find. But anyway, over there it's all automatic. Like they don't have any manual shit. But I don't know if they have the poor driving test. Our driving test, I don't know how hard they are compared to yours, but like I've known lots of people who failed their driving tests. Like, so I don't know if it's more fail than pass, but
I think it would probably be similar. I mean, it's over here we have a theoretical part that you have to show that you understand signs and things like that, and what to do under certain circumstances. Then you have the practical. Yeah. Where they get you to do an emergency stop, and they get you to do reversing round a corner and all that kind of stuff. But it is entirely possible over here to get your license and pass your driving test, having never driven in the dark, or in a city, or in the rain, things like that. They don't test for that, so that always comes as a real shock to people when they're. Because I've had a lot of friends who've learned to drive, and a lot of people I've worked with and things, and it's always like, oh my god, I've got to drive in the rain. What do I do? You've never switched the wipers on. You don't know where the button is for that.
Yeah. So Probably because I'm a boy growing up, and I was a bit of a daredevil. Like, I used to love driving in the snow because you get a chance to throw the back end of the car out and slide around corners and stuff. And I'd be pulling the parking brake or the emergency brake and making the back tires spin and doing all sorts of stuff and doing donuts. And, but my opinion was people that did that were better drivers because they learned how to handle their car in extreme situations.
How to handle the car, yeah.
Yeah, like there's been many times where I've lost control of a vehicle where most people would have crashed, and I kept control because I knew how to handle. I knew how to bring it back into control because I used to have a fun time intentionally throwing my car out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said. But remember, I totaled that car, my Toyota Corolla there, like a year and a half ago, when Megan was pregnant there.
Uh-huh.
It was short. It wasn't long after you and I first started talking. Remember, I totaled the car. That was a weird scenario because that would happen there. Normally, I would have recovered from, but I haven't been driving a lot. I've been a homebody since I moved to Nova Scotia, and it was really bad weather that night. And I was taking my wife out for dinner, and I said to her, like a minute before I crashed, I said, I don't feel comfortable driving right now. I feel like I've lost a lot of my skills since I've been off the road. And my wife immediately adjusted her seatbelt, like preparing herself for a crash because she had the seatbelt over her belly.
Oh.
And then she put the seatbelt under her belly, and that's probably the only reason Mackenzie survived because
wow.
I told my wife I didn't feel comfortable driving, and then I crashed the car into a tree a minute later. Like I hit a tree going like 70 kilometers an hour.
Oh God, man.
Yeah, so I'm just glad I'm so happy I was able to, because a lot of people wouldn't say that aloud, right? Like, because for other ego reasons, masculinity, they don't want to admit their weaknesses,
Well, here's the thing. There's a similar story. My wife and my daughter Lily were in a car with my wife's sister Rona. Now Rona is a bad driver. She drives on the edge all the time, to the point where I've felt very uncomfortable in the car with her. She would go around a corner and the wheels are screeching, which the next thing is the wheels are not screeching. They're just, you're just in the wrong carriage,
Yeah.
And there's several times I've asked her to slow down. Please, Rona, would you please just slow down? And she would laugh and she would slow down for a couple of miles and then she would speed up again. So Lily and Ali were in the car with her. They'd been out to North Berwick, which is about 25 miles away from here, and they were coming back. And Lily felt uncomfortable and she said to Rona, Auntie Rona, would you slow down? And instead of slowing down, she speeded up. And she lost control going round a corner. And the car went into a stone wall, nearly flipped on its lid. It was the stone wall that stopped it flipping on its lid, and the fire. There's a fire officer training facility near where they crashed, and the car behind was a car filled with firefighters.
Oh wow!
Who knew exactly what to do. So that was lucky, and they were taken to the sick kids hospital to get checked over. Everything was okay, just bruises and things like that. But isn't that funny? Like you said that to your wife, my daughter said that, and it's almost like you know what's coming. It's almost like you do know what's coming, even though you shouldn't really. But sometimes I think these sort of traumatic events are preceded by some inkling, some kind of foreknowledge.
Yeah, and for me, like even more than knowledge, I mean, it could have been part of that too. Like I knew something bad might have happened. Because the car was sliding around in the snow a bit, because we had about this much snow on the road, and we're driving through that. As the car was moving, I didn't feel I used to feel like this confidence and almost excitement when it did that, and I was feeling fear.
Yeah.
I don't normally feel that fear, and that fear is making me react differently than I normally would react. And I knew that, deep down, that if we were to lose control, I probably would not react the way I would normally react.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. Like we're going around like a slight curve, and the back of the car slid out on me.
Oh.
And normally I would just ride it out and have it go back and forth a few times. I've even had a car spin around on me 360 degrees and still kept it on the road. Right?
Wow.
And in this case, that did happen. I went to full spin around, and I had about 3 or 4 more fishtails, and then it in the ditch and right into a tree. And if we hadn't hit the tree, we would have gone way worse. Like the tree actually saved us, I think.
Oh man!
Even though the tree could have killed us, you
Wow.
know. So it was. Thankfully, we were driving an old 2010 Toyota that was built very well. All the airbags went off. You know, I hurt my knee and my elbow because I'm holding the steering wheel and I tried to hold myself from hitting the steering wheel instinctually, and I smashed my knee into the. But Megan spent a couple nights in the hospital, or a night or 2 days, 1 night and 2 days in the hospital, getting checked out, and we did some tests for Mackenzie, and everything tested out good. You know, so everything turned out fine. You know, and the ambulance cost me $750 to come pick me up.
Christ.
You know, so I didn't know that. That's a Nova Scotia thing, I guess, because that wouldn't cost me anything in Ontario.
Yeah.
You know, but but it is what it is. You know, and I'm really glad it didn't turn out worse. You know, like you talk about like the almost flipping over thing. Like I was in a car accident one time. It was before college, after high school. So it was like that summer before college. And this actually ties into a lot what we're talking about too. But I was riding with a buddy of mine. I haven't talked to this guy in years, so we can use names here. His name was Kevin Anderson. I love the guy, you know, and I doubt he's ever listened to any of my music or my podcast, or our podcast, I should say. But if he does, I hope he doesn't find any of this stuff insulting or disparaging. But this was back, you know, when we were like in our partying days, you know, so it was him, he was driving, it was in his new car. It's funny, he just got a new car because he was in a car accident, a really, really bad car accident like a week or two earlier. Like he T-boned like a large SUV going like 140 kilometers an hour.
Oof, Jesus.
You know, and thankfully he didn't, like, it was more of like he didn't hit it like straight on. So he kind of like, it wasn't a true T-bone. It was more of like if it would have been, he would have died. But he hit this car. He spun the SUV out. He went into a farmer's field and hit a fence post on a farmer's field, and it ripped his car in half. Like it was, if there's a passenger, they would have died.
Oh wow!
You know, but he was on the side of the car that didn't get messed up as bad, right? And so this was his new car. Like the insurance gave him money for a new car, and is only a couple weeks old. And we were going to a guy's house to buy some weed, and it was he was driving. I was in the passenger seat. His girlfriend was behind him, Pam, and there was a girl sitting behind me named Stacy, who was a girlfriend of a friend of ours. And we were just all hanging out that day, smoking weed, and we didn't have any weed, right? So we're like, we have to go get some weed. So we went to Little Britain, which is the town we lived near, and got some. I just went to the bank and got $60 cash, and we were driving to our friend's house that we knew sold weed, like just down the road. And it had been raining a little bit, so the roads were a little slick. And my buddy says to me, he goes, "Can you teach me how to do those fishtails you do with the parking brake?"
Jesus.
And I was like, "Yeah, sure. You know, I'll show you some stuff." You know, and I think the story we told everybody is deer ran in front of us, but this is the true story.
The truth's coming out now.
Yeah. So we were, and this road had a bunch of curves on it, right? So because I would always do the fishtails on curves. Like I do them on a straight road too, but the curves were always funner, right? You like drift around the curves.
This is like drifting. Yes, I've done that in many computer games. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was showing him so I said to him, I said, you don't want to like leave the parking brake on. You just lock it up for a second to get the tires to skid, and then once the back end starts to skid out, you put the parking brake back down, and then you handle the skid. And I said, and as you get more comfortable with it, you leave the parking brake on longer. Like that's how or emergency brake, whatever you want to call it. What do you call them there when you lock up the back wheels?
It's the back. Well, it's the handbrake.
Handbrake then. That's
handbrake.
Yeah.
So that's all the wheels though, isn't it? Is that not all the wheels?
No, the handbrake. So when you're playing your video games, when you hit the handbrake, the drift, as you're locking up the back wheels, that's why it makes you drift.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so the pedal brake does all the wheels, the handbrake does the back wheels.
Right. That explains so much.
There you go. So I'm basically teaching him how to tap the handbrake button onto the controller, right? But in real life.
Right, yeah.
So we did it a couple times. So I don't know like what maybe, because I'm in the passenger seat handling the brake for him and he's steering, right? And I'm giving him instructions, and because I'm really good at it, I didn't think he'd have any issues, right? So we did a few of them, and we're doing well. He was doing pretty well. He was handling himself, and he's having a good time. And then we did it like we're coming out of another curve. He decided to do it himself, and he pulled the parking brake, and he let it lock, and he couldn't get the button in to put it back down quick enough.
Yeah.
So the car really started going nuts, And then we finally got the Parker brake down. It was in this really aggressive fishtail, which again, I would have handled because I would let the car spin all the way around and then rejigged myself. But he didn't know that yet. So he went into the ditch across the road, going about 80, 90 kilometers an hour. And we hit a driveway. Like there was a driveway there. So we ran into this basically like a wall, and the car flipped end over the driveway. And he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. The rest of us were wearing seatbelts, but he wasn't. And the car flipped end over end. And, wait. Never mind. He was wearing a seatbelt. The rest of us weren't. I got that backwards.
Right.
Yes. I got that backwards. Sorry. He was wearing a seatbelt. I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. The girls in the back weren't wearing their seatbelts. And we flipped the car end over end. So it flipped over and then again it landed on its roof in the ditch.
Oh, jeez.
And I remember at the time, Perfect Circle had just released their second album, A 13th Step.
Okay.
And I was obsessed with this. I was obsessed with the CD. And we were listening to the song Pet. The one that yells, "Count the bodies like sheep" to the rhythm of the war drums. It's a song to his son, teaching about how the world's fucked up and that the world will send, world leaders will send droves of children into battle to die. And we just count the bodies like sheep when the battle's over kind of thing. So we're listening to the song at full volume on the CD player when this happens. The car flips end over end and the CD stops playing because it skips, right? Because of all the hitting and whatnot. But after the car is sitting upside down and we're all kind of like getting our wits about us, realize what has happened, the CD player comes back on, like full volume. So the car is upside down. The stereo's blaring this horrible song. It's the dark song at full volume. And these girls are screaming. They, one of them broke her ankles and the other one sprained something. And, and I'm like laying on the roof of the car. And I've never been in a car that's upside down before, so nothing makes sense, right? Like you're reaching for things that aren't where they're supposed to be. Like you're looking at the windshield, and all you see is grass, and the windshield's all smashed up. And I'm trying to get out the passenger door, and I'm kicking on the window to try and open it because I can't get it to open with the handle because I can't even reach the handle. And my buddy who owns the car, Kevin's like, "Don't break my window, man! Like, what are you doing? Like, And right, so." I look over and he's got like blood streaming off his head. He's bleeding everywhere.
Christ.
And I had a pretty bad bump on my head because I hit the windshield with my head. And, the windshield broke. The windshield broke with my head, and my shoulder was in bad shape, like my collarbone. Because when I went forward, I hit the post where the window is, and like the windows meet, the windshield and the doors meet. I hit my shoulder there really hard and I messed it up pretty bad. That's when I stopped roofing. I was done roofing after that, and because I couldn't pick anything up with that arm for a while, right? And then on top of that, I was into marijuana, right? But Kevin was into other stuff too. So he was into cocaine a bit at the time. So right at this point now, there's blood pooling on the roof of the car. And there's like little dime bags with cocaine residue floating in the blood. And there's like rolling papers. There's like everything that's on the floor of the car is on the ceiling right now, right? Like there's just shit all over the place.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And again, the stereo's still blaring. Like we're screaming at each other. These girls are screaming, so Kevin says to me, he's like, "Look, my window's broken." Or I don't know if his window was broken or if he had the window open when we had the accident. But he's like, "Go out my way. Come out my window." And I was like, but he couldn't get out. He's in a seatbelt still. He's hanging upside down while the rest of us are on the roof of the car. Right? So I crawl out the window and I pull Pam and I pull Stacy out of the car. And I helped, Stacy or Pam with the broken ankle. She needed help to get up to the side of the road because this is a country road, so there's no like sidewalks. It's just shoulders, like gravel shoulders, right? So I get Pam and Stacy out to the side of the road, and I go back to Kevin. I'm like, "All right, Kevin, let's get you out of here." And he's like, "I can't get out." And I'm like, "What do you mean you can't get out?" And I realize the car is on his arm, like his arm got out of the car, and the roof of the car is on his arm like this.
Oh.
And he's like, you gotta get the car off me, man. Like you have to get this car off me. And I'm like, okay, well you gotta get the seatbelt off you first because I can't pull you out of a car while you're wearing a seatbelt. So he pulls the seatbelt off and falls to the ground. He's screaming because he's laying on the roof of the car and he's putting more pressure on his arm, right?
Oh.
And at this point, like I don't know how much time's gone by, like maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. I don't know. At this point, we have like an audience. There's a good 10, 15 people who've pulled over now. and are standing around us, like on the shoulder of the road, like a semicircle, looking at us, like gawking, like they're watching a movie or something. And there was a guy there, like a big guy, and I was like, I need your help to get this car off my friend, because I'm trying to lift it, and my shoulder is killing me. Like I can't get this fucking car off of him, right? And this guy is like, oh, you can't move the car, it might kill him. And I'm like, it's not his neck. He doesn't have a broken neck. It's his arm that's stuck. Like, you know, I don't know what's going on here. Like, he needs to get out of this car. Like, I know it's going to blow up, catch on fire. Like, we got to get him out of the fucking car, you know? And he refuses to help. And people are just and he's the only one that responded to me. No one else even talked to us. There's one guy says, are you wearing your seatbelts? And I'm like, what the fuck does it matter? Like, you know, like my buddy's stuck. So I remember I turned around and put my back to the car, and I grabbed it with both my hands and pushed with all my strength. And just like, I was screaming, like, "Ah!" Pushing on this car and yelling, get out, get out, get out. And I felt a hand on my shoulder, and he goes, you can stop, you can stop. And it was him. He was already standing beside me, telling me to put the fucking car down, you know? Right. And I was like, okay, good. You're out. And he's like, what the fuck did we do, man? And I'm like, we got to get our story together. So I'm like, we got to tell him it was a deer ran in front of us, that we swerved to miss a deer. You know, you can't get charged. Like you just had an at-fault accident 2 weeks ago. You have another one, they're gonna take your driver's license away. You might get charged with stuff. I don't know. Right? So him and I go walk about 50 meters to 100 meters away from the crowd. They're all staring at the car and talking to the girls and whatnot. Because the girls, they're okay. Like they're in pain, but there's no bleeding. Like there's no head injuries or neck injuries as far as I can tell. I took first aid a couple times at this point. So like I'm really in tune to this shit. Like I was like taking care of everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So me and Kevin walked down the road, and we're both kind of like looking at each other, like with our heads close, going like, he's panicking, like my dad's gonna fucking kill me, man. Like I don't know what the fuck to do. And I was like, just stick to the story. A deer ran in front of us. That's what happened. Don't tell him you're pulling the e-brake. Don't tell him we're doing dumb shit. Don't tell him we're going to get weed. Like just, we're out for a fucking drive, you know? You know?
Oh my God.
And so as we're like having this conversation, I'm looking down and I'm realizing, like, because he's got cuts in his face, he's bleeding everywhere, right? And then I look down and we're standing in a puddle of blood, like a big puddle of blood. And I'm looking around at me, and it's not coming from me. And I'm like, dude, you're bleeding like really bad. And he's like, well, from where? And we're looking around, and then we look at his arm that was under the car, and the car didn't just like, it wasn't just like a quick, like the car rolled over his arm, like the car was moving, right? And his arm, and there was broken glass and rocks and mud and shit, right?
Oh no.
So I look down at his arm, and like on his arm, he has like this big like C shape, like where like something grabbed his skin and just peeled it back.
Oh,
and
God.
And there's like dirt and like fat and muscle all torn up and mashed together in his arm. And he's and the back and on the back side of his arm, he has a big like L-shaped cut too, where it's the skin's peeled back and I can see the muscles and everything.
Oh no.
And he starts to move his fingers, and you can see the tendons moving and everything.
Oh my God.
Right? He's like, whoa, look at that. Like he's almost impressed with it. Like he looks like RoboCop, like mid-surgery or something, you know? And and I was like, holy fuck. Right? So I'm like, so I immediately run back to the group of people, and I'm like, because I'm like, I wasn't wearing pants that required a belt, so I didn't have a belt. So all I could think about is I need a tourniquet. I need a fucking tourniquet, like right now. So I'm back at the crowd of people, and I'm like, can someone give me a belt? Like someone take their belt off their pants and give it to me right now. I need a fucking belt. And I'm screaming at these people. And the guy that told me not to move anything, the big guy, he has this big like brass belt buckle, and he grabs the belt buckle and goes, this is a brand new belt, buddy. Like as if to say, like, you're not getting my belt. I just bought this thing, you know? And then Kevin comes walking up behind me. He goes, dude, I'm wearing a belt. I have a belt.
Oh no. Oh God.
So I was like, okay, all right. So he liked to dress with baggy pants. So as soon as he takes his belt off, his pants fall down around his ankles, right? And so I take his belt and I wrap it around his arm, and I pull it as tight as I can, you know, and I make him sit down beside his girlfriend, and I make him hold his hand up in the air, and I'm crouching, like kneeling behind him, holding his arm, and I'm squeezing around the belt as hard as I can with my hands, and I'm crying, like I'm just crying, I'm bawling my eyes out, saying like, I'm so sorry, I should have let you fucking do that shit. I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. I kept apologizing to him. Yeah. And like I thought he was gonna lose his arm. Like I thought for sure his life was gonna be changed irrevocably forever. How
old were you all when this happened?
18, I think, maybe.
18. Yeah. See, that's what
dumb.
you do when you're 18. Yeah. Christ.
Exactly. So as I'm holding his arm, I'm squeezing his arm, I hear someone like whispering to me in my ear. It felt like it was whispering, saying, "You can let go. It's okay. You can let go." And I remember going like, "I can't let go." And he's like, "I got it. You can let go." And I let go. I look over, and there's a guy who's got his hands above my hands. He's squeezing his arm for me, right? And I was like, "Okay." And I let go. And he looks around and he goes, "Did you do all this?" And I was like, "No, I wasn't driving." He's like, No. I mean like the tourniquet, and you got the girls out, and everybody's like, "Did you do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I did that." And then the one guy goes, "Yeah, he even lifted the car. He lifted the car off that guy." You know? And this guy happened to be a volunteer firefighter, kind of like the guys you're dealing with. He happened to be driving by too. So he didn't even get a phone call. He just happened to be driving down the road a few minutes after all the stuff happened. And he called in the fire department. And so he was holding Kevin's arm and kept telling me, "Calm down. You did really well." Like, and my buddy Kevin's totally cool about it still. He's smoking a cigarette going like, "It's all right, man." Like, he's moving his fingers still going like, "It's fucking cool, man." You know, my arm's fine. You know, and
I take it the sort of the adrenaline had pushed the pain away. That's usually what happens. It's
exactly, yeah. That's exactly what's happened, you know. And so, and I remember too, like I knew if the cops showed up, we're gonna get in trouble for something, you know, like and so the first fire truck that shows up, the guy that's driving the fire truck is a friend of mine. I curl with him because you know I was big into curling, right? He used to be at the curling. He'd be curled at the same curling club. And he was like, "Chris, man, what the fuck's going on here?" You know, and he looks in the car and he sees the drugs and stuff in the car. And he's like, "Get that shit out of there, man." So I get in the car and I'm rifling all this bloody shit into a backpack. Like a bong, some pipes, you know, the empty dime bags, the rolling papers, all the paraphernalia I could find, I put into a backpack. I zip it up and I give it to one of the girls. I'm like, "Just hang on to that," you know? And he makes sure the ambulances get there before the police, and he puts us in an ambulance and sends us to the hospital before the cops show up. And so when the cops get there, they're like, "We need to talk to them." They're like, "No, they went to the hospital. There was some bad injuries, you know, like fuck off." And the firefighter that showed up in the truck says, "I know the guy. He's a good kid. Nothing fucking weird's going on here." A deer ran in front of them. Like he told the cops the story that the same story that I was telling, right? And so we got 2 ambulance rides to the hospital. And I remember Kevin was in the hospital for hours. They're pulling bits of glass out of his arm and all sorts of stuff. But the doctor told him that if I hadn't lifted the car off of his arm, he probably would have lost his arm. Yeah. And if I hadn't put the tourniquet on him, he probably would have bled to death. You know, so even though I felt responsible, or at least partially responsible for the accident, the doctor told my friend over and over again that your friend Chris saved your life, if not your arm. You know, like everything he did is the reason why the worst thing that's gonna happen to you is you're gonna have some nasty scars. That's the worst thing that's happened to you, and you wrecked your new car. Yeah, you know. Yeah. And I remember it was bittersweet. It was weird. You know, that song still sounds weird to me. Every time I hear that song, that's all I think about is that car accident.
Oh my God! Of course. How could you? Oh wow.
You know, and
God.
And I remember, like 2 days later, we're out in his driveway fixing his car because he couldn't put it through insurance because of the accident he had a couple weeks earlier. So we went to a wrecking yard and we're buying parts of like totaled cars like his. So his car was black, but we had like a red hood on the car and like a green door, you know, like there's all these different colored panels on it, you know, and we got it back to drivable. Right. You know, like he drove that car for a couple of years before he sold it to somebody. Wow. And the sad thing is the guy he sold it to, also he died of a tragic death within a year of buying that car from him. And I remember he the blood stains were still in the ceiling and stuff. Like he used to brag about that's Kevin Anderson's blood.
Oh my God.
You know?
Was the car was cursed then? That's what you're trying to say?
Well, maybe it felt like it, you know. It felt like something like that because, you know, the guy, like I said, the guy that bought it, he did pass away, which is fucked up, you know.
Gee whiz, man. That's a horrific story for me. I hate stories like that. I just put myself in that situation. Think, what would I do? I've never been in a situation as dire as that, I don't think. You know, there have been emergencies and things like that have happened, and I'm aware of what it feels like to kick into there's some kind of alternate zone comes in when you have I've been in many car accidents, believe it or not. I don't drive, but my dad, we used to drive a lot because we used to drive to see my grandparents every weekend, so we drove a lot. Yeah. And I've been in at least 2 cars that were written off after the accident, so I remember the feeling of everything slowing down. When you have everything slows down and you're like, in your memory you can see it all playing out. Of course, you can't do anything about it because you can't move fast enough. But you do see it happen in slow motion. It's a weird one.
Another weird thing is he was in 2 more car accidents within a month after that too. He had 4 car accidents all in the span of about 5 weeks. And the one after that was his girlfriend was driving, the one that was in the back seat that broke her ankle and stuff. She was driving, and they went around a curve too fast, and she lost control and rolled the car into the ditch. And it was like within a mile of the accident we had just had. And then something like a week after that, he was in the city and he got rear-ended. Someone drove into the back of his car, the one that had all the colored panels.
What on earth? Good God.
Yeah. Yeah, so luckily for him, the severity went down and down. Like the first one was the worst accident as far as like speed and severity, so. But,
my God. What a story. That's going to make that's going to make a good episode. That'll be a good episode.
Right, yeah.
So we need to do Korea part 2.
Okay, yeah.
But let me change the recording here. Because we're at another 1 hour 25, so I'll stop that.